The hussy is a kind of shameless woman, a kind of woman who is on the make, stands up for herself, and I think historically probably someone who was probably a little bit disreputable.
Up until now, the world has been run by men.
I think it comes from a 1970s kind of reclaiming of a term that was often used about convict women, brazen hussies, you know, as in these women who kind of stand up for themselves and don't behave in normally feminine sort of ways. And then you go back and you see the actual footage of protests and demonstrations, and I think it does really convey the energy, the humour, the joy of being part of that movement, as well as the anger and the passion. I think one of the important things about this film is that it does really present the achievements of the women's liberation movement in fresh new light for a new generation of women. I think there's a number of things that awaken women's liberation at that particular moment. There was real discontent around women's private role. They weren't getting equal pay. Women weren't able to participate in public life in the way that men were. Women could not drink in the public bar of many pubs. They couldn't serve on juries. You know, women were not considered equal citizens in the way that men were.
I think men feel women's liberation is a threat to their manhood, and it really is a threat to their manhood because their manhood is phony.
But I think in the very late 60s and early 1970s, you have a number of women are more highly educated than ever before. You have more and more women entering the paid workforce than ever before, but also finding that even with all of those advantages, they're still not kind of achieving the sorts of possibilities that they feel that should be theirs. And of course, it also shows the role that Indigenous women played in the women's movement and the kind of critiques that Indigenous women made.
The most oppressed people in this country is the black women.
They were often saying, look, I was involved, but often the women were quite racist. They didn't understand where I was coming from, and they didn't understand Indigenous women's distinctive point of view and distinctive issues. The election of Whitlam in 1972 is a great opportunity for the women's movement in Australia. Whitlam is the first national leader anywhere in the world to appoint a women's affairs advisor in the form of Elizabeth Reed.
Men have been able to leave their children behind because they've got wives slaving away as their servants, looking after their children.
The idea that you could have feminists in government making decisions, influencing policy. So I think one of the things about this film is it says, yes, a lot has changed, but more needs to change. I was talking to some older feminists who were in the film after a screening, and one said, we've just got to stop talking about Me Too and sexual harassment and just kind of work towards a world where those things can't happen. You know, stop complaining about it and start doing something about it. And I was kind of taken aback when she said that. But I thought there is something, I think, in the idea that we're often a bit passive and we're waiting for someone to organise us into a force for change. And the whole point of women's liberation was you are the force for change, you can do it. You and your friends, you and your group can make a difference, and I think we forget that sometimes. So feminism today, if you look at it in the media, you would think it's probably quite corporate focused, that, oh, we don't have enough women on boards, or we don't have women in politics or women in positions of power, whereas I think probably there's some still quite fundamental things about women's economic equality, freedom from violence, things like that, and there are lots and lots of people who are working behind the scenes in very quiet ways to make all those things happen.